You know how you know the bye week is really over, Rube?
How do you know?
We're back. That's it. We're back. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Rube, how was your bye week?
It was relaxing. It was nice. It was nice to watch football Sunday and get away a little bit and recharge and get ready for the stretch run, Dave.
Yeah, you said that like
hit the hot tub, get the body healed
you're starting tailback this week or something. Yeah, no, it's always the bye week is always much needed for everyone, and it was a late bye week this year. So yeah, we hope everyone enjoyed a stress-free weekend of watching football, even though some of the results did matter. So you had rooting interests, but yeah, we're back, and it's a fun time to have a bye week because you come back and there's 4 games left for the Eagles and a legitimate shot to make the playoffs here.
I think so. I think it's right there for them. They just have to beat the teams they should beat, and they're in. If they play the way they have most of the last month and a half, minus the Giants game, they're going to be in the postseason. So, it's going to be really interesting to see how this team responds to the situation, how Jalen Hurts responds to the situation. Hasn't played. By the time we get to Sunday, he won't have played in a few weeks. So I think we're going to learn a lot about him, about the coach, and about the team over these next 4 games.
Yeah. So right now, the 538 has them with a 38% chance to make the playoffs. The New York Times models pretty a decent amount lower at like 28, 29%. Either way, it's not a given that they're going to make the postseason, but if they take care of what they have to take care of, they're going to get in. I mean, if they went out, they're in. I mean, they're in if they went out. Now there are other situations. If they win 3 of 4, they'll need some help. If they win 2 of 4, they'll need a lot of help. They really have to win 3 of these last 4 to get to the postseason, and that it's doable. I mean, they have Washington twice, they have the Giants in there, and then they have the Cowboys in Week 18, which is still really weird to say, when they might not really have anything to play for, or they might be playing for seeding. We don't know exactly what that game will look like, but I think these are 4 winnable games. I don't think they'll win all 4. I don't know if they will, but the last time they did that was 2019, and they needed to do it to get into the playoffs.
Who was the quarterback then?
Nope, not getting me.
I keep trying.
But he was great in that stretch. I mean, if they get that kind of quarterback play from Jalen Hurts, they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think 3 wins will. I feel like if they win 3, they'll get in, and there's a chance they won't. But I think they will. I think if they win 3, they will. If they win 2, I don't think they will. And you go back and play that game. You look at that Giants game. You watch them playing. Like, how did they lose to this team?
Yeah.
Even the 49ers game, like, they should have won that game, but the 49ers are at least a competitive team, and they actually, I mean, I didn't think Garoppolo had it in him. You watch him at the end of that game, and he made all the throws. But the Giants game is the one that if they don't get in, that's going to really haunt them the whole offseason. Losing to that team and that quarterback.
You're probably right. But the 49ers game, more important when you look at the playoff picture.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that'll hurt more. But as far as just kind of looking like, how did they lose that game?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, the 49ers, that comeback certainly was tough for the Eagles. But, Washington, you look at them, and I think Rivera is a really good defensive coach. He's a great leader, but that's not a great team, and they're banged up. Terry McLaurin's really their only big time weapon. I mean, they don't have another receiver. I think McKissick's their next leading receiver. They don't have another receiver with more than 400 yards. It's kind of similar to, at least, I mean, the Eagles have Goddard and DeVonta. Washington's just got McLaurin, and Heineke had looked really good until that game, and he got hurt. His status is unknown. It looks like he'll play. McLaurin, we don't know. They're missing a bunch of guys on the COVID list. I mean, they just seem like a team that's, coming in here, ready to, Eagles coming off a bye. It just seems like a game that the Eagles really, really should go in and dominate that team. Whether
Yeah.
even if Heineke's playing, is he going to be 100% with that knee? And McLaurin's in the protocol. So I just feel like that's a game that you have to win if you want to call yourself a playoff contender. And that's when I say we'll learn a lot about the Eagles Sunday. It's a game they should win, they need to win, they have to win, and we'll find out what they're all about by 4:00 Sunday.
Yeah, I mean they need to win. There's not really a way around it. You look at the playoff standings right now. The 49ers are in that 6th seed. They're 7-6. Washington in the 7th seed, 6-7. There are a few teams that are 6-7. Washington has the best conference record, which is that higher tiebreaker. So that's why they're in the 7th seed. The problem might be the Vikings because they're also 6-7. Right now, they hold a tiebreaker over the Eagles for common opponents. So you're going to need some help with the Vikings losing down the stretch too if you're going to leapfrog them. The Washington's like in a way an easier way to leapfrog. You just beat them. You beat them and you jump them, but you're going to need some help with the Vikings.
What you have the Vikings schedule in front of you?
I can get it
because I feel like they have some tough games coming up. They're a team that's got. They're a veteran team, a veteran quarterback. They've been through this kind of thing. I don't think they're a great team by any means.
Okay, so they're at Bears versus Rams, at Packers versus Bears.
Yeah, so Packers and Rams. The Rams looked incredible last night, and so those are. That looks like 2-2 to me.
Yeah, and look, there's no guarantee they win both those games against the Bears.
Yeah, if I'm the Eagles, I don't want to put any of my playoff hopes in Matt Nagy's hands.
Yeah, I get it, but I don't think it's like a slam dunk.
But it's a tough schedule. That's a tougher schedule than the Eagles have. So.
Oh sure,
yeah. So, and even the Dallas game is Dallas is a weird team because they can look so good sometimes and they can look so bad sometimes.
Yeah. That defense is starting to hum, and that was always that was the question coming in with it. It's funny now their defense is playing great and their offense isn't looking quite as good.
Right.
Which is kind of funny, but if they start to click on all cylinders, that's a really good team.
No doubt about it. But I guess my point is Dallas coming into the Link on the last day of the season. I feel like anything can happen in that game. If it comes down to it, I wouldn't say that's a slam dunk. Even if the Cowboys need that game, we've seen the Eagles so many times win big games late in the season against Dallas, and Dallas never wins that game. Dallas never beats the Eagles in a must-win game at the end of the season. It's incredible. The Eagles have won 12 straight. So I like the Eagles in that game if it comes down to it. But it's more fun than being 3-10, sitting here 3-10. So
and there's reason to watch, and there's always the debate about whether it's, and you and I are. This is one thing that we agree on 100%. Is it better to make there's not many of those, you're right. But this is one thing we definitely agree on. It's better to be in the playoffs, and especially for this team because you have a first-year head coach, you have a young quarterback, you're trying to figure it out. You have a lot of young players who haven't played in the playoffs. So, yeah, it's better to be there, and especially this year when your own first-round pick isn't as important because you have other first-round picks. So, all that together, and you're like, yeah, let's see if you can get to the playoffs. It's this year more than any other. It's worth it to get there. I guess in like other seasons you can question that, but no, this year it's so important to get to the playoffs if you can.
Yeah, I'm just a big believer in that experience. There's no way to get playoff experience other than being in there, and it's so hard to get there. So for all the young players, especially the quarterback, because I would say if they get in there, that means Jalen's probably played well down the stretch. If they get in there and he plays well in a playoff game in, whether it's in LA or in Green Bay or in Phoenix or Tampa, wherever it is, if he plays well in a playoff game on the road in January, I think we would look differently at him over the offseason than if he doesn't. So I think you put a lot more weight on that. First of all, you're playing a good team. You're going to be on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment. You're playing a good defense against any of those teams. So I would love to see how he responds to that if they get to that point. I think that's such a valuable, kind of, way to learn about any player.
Yeah. For my own selfish sake, I hope it's not in Green Bay. I don't want to have to figure out how to get the Green Bay.
They might not lose again. They might not lose again. So I think they're going to end up in the one spot. So I think you don't have to worry. Okay. I hate the one bye, but for the Eagles' purposes, 7 teams, it certainly helps them.
Yeah, this is off schedule here, but I wanted to get your take on it because it's become and I should have had this on our little schedule here, but with how well Micah Parsons is playing, and especially that last game, it's kind of become a conversation among fans about that first round pick. The Eagles traded up to get DeVonta Smith. Now, I don't know if the Cowboys would have allowed them to trade up if they thought they were going after Micah Parsons, but it's kind of opened this debate. What do you make of all that? I mean, do you still think DeVonta was the right pick? Or do you use that hindsight and say, oh, man, they could have had Micah Parsons?
I was intrigued by Parsons throughout the pre-draft process. I mean, he looked like a stud, but I really didn't think the Eagles had a choice at that point. You talk about drafting the best available player, but they didn't have a wide receiver. I mean, they just didn't have one, and they had to keep trying. I would have been fine if they took Parsons. I was really intrigued by him. And look, Parsons is coming off an incredible game. He's played well all year. I think for this team and their needs and where they were, heck, if Parsons was here, he might not be playing 20 snaps a game. Who knows? Their linebacker rotation. So I'm kidding, but it's easy right now to sit here. He's playing at an unbelievable level. I would have been fine taking him. I think I said that back in the spring, but I'm okay with DeVonta. I mean, I think he's going to be a really good player. They got to get him involved. What's he got? 4 targets the last 2 games.
Yeah,
got to get him involved in the offense because that's just he's by far your best receiver. But that said, I'm okay with the pick.
I am too, and it does make you think though, because Parsons was labeled as an off-ball linebacker, and really his strength this year has been his ability to play that position, but also to be an edge rusher. I knew he could rush. I didn't right now he's playing at a high enough level where he could be an all-pro at either position.
And I don't think the Cowboys had any idea because, I mean, they had to use him in that role in an emergency.
Yeah.
Because they were missing so many guys and they're like, well, we're just going to have to use him. So it's not like they were planning on it. It's not like that's why they selected him. It's not like they had this in mind for him. It was just one of those things where, we got an emergency. We need somebody to rush the quarterback and Micah, get in there. And so he turns out to be incredible at it. So, but that's, hey, you draft good players, that kind of thing happens. But I still have a lot of faith in DeVonta to be a real true number 1 receiver like they haven't had since Deshaun and Macklin were here.
Other than I agree with you. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's still right now. Would you say Parsons is a better player? Well, yeah. I mean, he's playing at such a ridiculously high level. I mean, he's a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate, but he's also he's on a team where he can just be a part. He can just be a piece of a really good defense. I mean, DeVonta, he's the wide receiver core. I mean, he's basically it. So it's just a really, he's on a young team with a young quarterback and a new offense and a new coach. And Micah Parsons goes in there and he's got great players around him. He's on a team that's at a different stage of its development than DeVonta, and I think he's got a much better, environment around him to excel. I guess, but that Cowboys defense was pretty bad last year.
Yeah, but they have other good players.
They do. I mean, but you can argue the Eagles have other. I don't disagree with you, but you can argue the Eagles have other good players on offense. I mean, they do. They have Dallas Goedert. They have a great offensive line. They have good running backs. So, but anyway, I still agree with your overall point that DeVonta is still a legitimate number one receiver, and it's what the Eagles needed. So, and the Cowboys probably wouldn't have traded with the Eagles if they thought they're going to take Parsons. So,
right.
What does it matter?
Yeah. I mean,
well, you mentioned that the Eagles don't really have a wide receiver core outside of DeVonta. The one guy who's given them a little something is Quez Watkins. Now he's on the reserve COVID list. There's a chance he's not ready for this game. I guess there's a chance he could be. The rules allow for a vaccinated player to give them a chance to play. So we don't know if Quez is vaccinated, but if he is, he would need to be asymptomatic for 48 hours and have 2 negative PCR tests at least 24 hours apart. So it's possible, but if they don't have them, I mean, it is a loss.
Yeah. If I remember when we've talked to him, and we haven't talked to him in a while, but generally, I think the unvaccinated guys are supposed to have a mask on while they're in an interview session. He hasn't, so I think it's a pretty fair way. Now, Aaron Rodgers didn't either, but I think it's neither did Joe Flacco. So who knows? But I'm guessing he's vaccinated. There's a very high likelihood because, I mean, most of the team is. But anyway, yeah, it would be a big loss. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if J-Jaw plays more or Greg Ward, but there's nobody who can do what he does as far as stretching the field. And, I like him in the mid-range game. And they kind of started, Minshew threw him a couple mid-range balls, which was good to see. The good thing is these guys get tested Monday morning, and it kind of goes for Jonathan Allen and the Washington guys as well. So they have, and that's whether you have a game or not, you're tested Monday morning. And so they have all week to have the 2 negative tests 24 hours apart. So I think there's a good chance he'll be back. But if not, I mean, it's not like they've got any depth at that position. I mean, gosh, you're trying to figure out ways to play Reagor less, and you lose Quez. And, I don't know if there's a guy in the practice squad that they are high on. I mean, you go into that Washington game with DeVonta and Greg Ward and J-Jaw and Reagor. Good luck.
Yeah, well, I mean, the most obvious answer is probably to just play Greg Ward in the slot because they've really used Quez as their slot. I mean, they've played him outside at times, but that's probably what they do. They just plug Greg Ward in there. Probably not what I would do.
Speed is comparable.
Yeah, not exactly. I mean, he's obviously a different type of player than Quez, but Ward is at least solid. Yeah. You kind of know what you're going to get from him. The next, you're right, they have 3 receivers on the practice squad: John Hightower, Deion Kane, and Keyshawn Johnson. Hightower's not that Keyshawn. Hightower's probably the most likely to get elevated if they need him. I don't know how much they can rely on him, but I go back to what we've been saying for weeks, Rube. They have a surplus of running backs, right? One of those running backs would be a pretty good option in the slot. I'd play Kenny Gainwell. I'd make him a slot receiver.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this for a while, and I like the idea. I mean, I think Greg Ward has, he caught 50 balls last year. It was for 50 yards, but he caught them. No, he's a solid guy, and he had a lot. I mean, he's really good on third down. He's kind of like a poor man's Jason Avant on third down. I mean, you can trust him to know where the first down marker is, and if the ball comes his way, he'll catch it. But I like the idea of Gainwell in the slot, and I've liked it since he first raised it. I mean, he's as solid a receiving back as a rookie as I've seen. I mean, Miles was really good at it as a rookie, but Gainwell just has such a he's got those soft hands. He's so smooth when he catches it. He catches it and gets yards after the catch. He's got a great feel for space. Does he have a drop this year? I don't think he does. I don't remember any. I like his game a lot. They got, I mean, we don't know if Jordan Howard's going to play. It looks like he will, but I'm all for it. I'm all for a combination of of Ward and Gainwell in the slot. At least Hightower has some speed. That's the one thing. That's the one similarity with Quez. He's got some speed. So maybe he'll be up, and you can try to stretch the field with him. I mean, he caught a couple 50-yarders early in his career last year, early in the season, and he just hasn't done anything since. So he can do it. I'd rather have him out there than Rager, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen.
No, it won't happen. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I don't know anything about Deion Kane or Keyshawn Johnson. It'd be fun if they signed the other Keyshawn Johnson. Or they could sign Travis Fulgham. He's still on the Miami's practice squad.
He actually got released from their practice squad, so he has no ties right now. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How do you get released from Miami's practice squad? What happened to that guy? He must have just dropped everything in practice.
I don't know. Yeah, it's amazing. This time last year, his run was already over.
Yeah.
We're over a year removed from that stretch.
He was the best receiver in the NFL for 5 weeks.
It's unbelievable. Doesn't make any sense.
No, none. Hey, there's so much to explore in Valley Forge and Montgomery County, PA. Montgomery County is composed of charming little towns and main streets, each with its own personality, style, and unique vibe. Whether you're looking to get away with your family or enjoy a special trip with friends, leave behind the stress of planning and use our guide to find some of the most amazing things to do. Explore which town and which main street suits you the best, or go visit every one of them. Visit makeitmainstreet.com to plan your getaway today.
So, Rube, I have a list here of 5 things I think the Eagles need to do over this stretch to make the playoffs. And
you have not shared these with me, so I'm flying blind here.
Yeah, you're flying blind, but I mean they're pretty obvious. But I want to go through the 5 and see first off if you agree or if there's anything I missed. The first one is get steady play from Jalen Hurts. He doesn't have to be spectacular. I know, the quarterback. Yeah. It doesn't have to be spectacular, but he can't play like he did against the Giants. They need steady play from him. He has to make better decisions. He has to not turn the football over. If he does that, then they have a shot. I mean, this is the most obvious one, but I'm assuming you agree with it here.
No, I don't think he needs to play well at all. They're so talented that they can get away with him playing like crap. No, yeah, it's really the one thing that's the one question about this team all year. And we've talked about the consistency that's been missing from his game. Well, here you go. You got 4 games. You're presumably healthy. It sounds like he's fine. The days of facing the Buccaneers and the Chiefs and the hot teams, that's over. Although I guess Washington has won 4 out of 5, but it's really laid out there for him. And yeah, I mean, we talked about it. How is he going to respond to this situation? Is he the guy? I think these next 4 weeks will really go a long way to answering all the questions we have about Jalen Hurts. If he does what you just said, if he comes out and plays smart, error-free football for the most part, converts third downs, makes plays when he needs to with his legs, spreads the ball around, puts up 30 points and doesn't make dumb mistakes and reads it deep. I mean, if he does all the things that an NFL quarterback has to do, they're going to be in the playoffs and they're going to win 3 of these next 4 games. So that's the number one thing facing the Eagles this year. It's the number one thing facing them over these next 4 games. And can't wait to see how he responds. I'm really curious.
Yeah, I really am too. And the good news for him is that unlike early in the year, it's not all going to be on him. They're not going to ask him to drop back and throw 50 times. So that leads me to my next one. Continue to run the ball effectively. And it's pretty clear that this is what this team is. How sustainable is it long-term? Who knows? But they've gone for 175 yards on the ground in 6 straight. That's the formula. That's the formula for this
36 years to do that.
Yeah. The 85 Bears, right? Yeah.
85 Bears, yeah. Yeah, so it's interesting to me because I was thinking a lot about this. Like, you're evaluating your quarterback in a scheme that runs the ball 45 times a game, but that's not always going to be the case. You're not always going to have that kind of running game. I don't think you want to build an offense around that kind of running game. I don't think it's sustainable. And it's interesting to me because if you're running backs get hurt all the time. If you don't have running backs like Miles at a high level, like Jordan Howard, and you have to rely on your quarterback more, there's going to be times that happens. If you've evaluated Jalen in this lens of running for 200 yards a game, I mean, in 2 years, I mean, what if Miles isn't here? What if Jordan Howard is, will he be able to make enough plays with his arm that, it doesn't matter? So it's an interesting little side thing about the running game. You're not going to be able to do this all the time. And can you make enough plays, in the passing game that when the running game's not there, what if, somebody's going to stop it? Somebody's going to stop their running game at some point. Nobody has lately, but, when they do, if a team totally sells out against the run, stacks the box, maybe it's a bad weather day, can they make the plays throwing the ball? So I think for these next few weeks, yeah, they can keep running it. It looks like Jordan Howard. I think when you have Jordan and Miles together, it's a really tough 1-2 to stop. They're just so different. Once the defense kind of gets a beat on Miles, then you bring in Jordan to hammer it up the middle and vice versa. So in the short term, yeah, I think they can keep running it with this O-line. But yeah, say like in 2 years, maybe Kelsey's retired and Dickerson's hurt. I don't want to jinx anybody, but the situation could be really different. And, you need a quarterback that can make plays when you're not running the ball. So I've been thinking a lot about that. Like, we're evaluating Jalen now, like, all right, here's the 200 rushing yards, go make, a handful of throws. That's not always going to be the case.
Yeah. But for the next 4 games.
Yeah. I went a little big picture there, a little long term, but it's something I thought about a lot during the bye was, yeah, what, they're running it great now, but what happens when they're not? And they're kind of evaluating him in this scheme that runs the ball so well, but you're not always going to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but it can't change. You can't say, well, we're going to stop running the ball so much because we need to
absolutely. I totally agree. Totally
quarterback. Yeah, no, but I understand what you're saying. It presents challenges in that evaluation. Yeah. But you're right. I mean, at some point, teams are going to do whatever they can to take it away, which leads me to my next one.
Mr. Segway strikes again.
Dallas Goedert and DeVonta Smith have to be their top targets. They have to go into every game and figure out ways to get them involved. They can't, again, have a game like the Giants game where Jalen Reagor had as many targets as DeVonta and Dallas combined. You just can't have it. And I know that wasn't the plan going into the game. That's how it unfolded. It can't unfold that way. It just can't.
Yeah, I think you wrote something, in your mailbag about how you can't force the ball to DeVonta, but you got to get him the ball. And that's exactly right. It's like, you don't want to throw into double coverage, but I mean, and that's what when we talk about reading the defense, I mean, there's going to, reading, just seeing the whole field. I mean, because somebody's going to be singled and, you can't double everybody. And if your first read, I mean, that's the problem is when Jalen's first read is double teamed and he's taken off running because somebody's maybe that first read's here and that second read's over there. You see elite quarterbacks do that. And like they look down there, then look over here and throw it. We haven't seen him do that. And that's kind of the next phase of his development. But, if DeVonta is doubled and Goddard's wide open here, for a 12, 14-yard gain, you can't run for 5 yards. You got to get it to Goddard. So I think this is as important as any of them is and it kind of goes along with number one is running the offense and going through your progressions and getting the best players the ball. You're right. I mean, the Giants game, what did Goddard have? 1 catch for no yards?
Yeah.
And, DeVonta's had 2 games in a row, obviously last week, with the, Gardner was playing, but those guys have to get the ball. This is not one of those offenses with like 5 equal guys who are going to have like 700 yards. I mean, they have 2 weapons. And then there's other guys who can make plays, but I mean, Gainwell and Miles, Quez here and there. But I mean, they don't have another tight end. You know, their third best wide receiver after Quez and DeVonta is, I don't know, J-Jaw. I don't even know. Greg Ward, but so those two guys have to be the focus of the offense. Is a long-winded way of saying yes, I agree.
Yeah, and some of it's on Sirianni, because if you go to a defensive coordinator and there's so much talk about you don't want to force it, and I get that you don't want to force it, but if a defensive coordinator, if you're telling them we're not going to force it, we're going to try to get the ball to Jalen Reagor instead of DeVonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, well, that's a pretty big win for that defensive coordinator. He'll take that all day. Yeah. And that's what they're trying to do. You can't allow them to dictate that. You have to dictate your terms, and your terms are that 88 and 6 have to be involved. So it's a really important thing.
And we've experienced this, what we think is a guy that's open, to Jalen. I mean, is he accurate for that guy to be open in his mind? Is he accurate enough to get him the ball? If he's not, there's not a lot of times a guy's going to be wide open, especially a wide receiver, and there's nobody near him. He's got to throw them. He's got to throw into tight windows, not into double teams where it's going to get picked off or knocked down. But you're gonna have times where you gotta thread the needle and to get your best players the ball. I mean, you just don't. You watch football all day. I watched football all day yesterday, and you see guys making, it looks like they're covered, and they go up and make a great play, and he's got to trust his receivers to do that and put the ball where it needs to be.
Yeah, and those two in particular have the ability to come down with balls like that. And you're not throwing everything up for grabs, but I think it's fair to say both of those guys have the body control to make tough catches.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
The fourth one flips sides of the field. The pass rush has to affect games. And sacks would help, but they just have to consistently be better. It's been an underwhelming unit for a lot of the year, and they have talent. They have Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave, Josh Sweat, Derek Barnett. They have the players to make plays, and it just hasn't been consistent enough. More than anything else in the defense, that unit needs to take over some of these games.
Yeah, I do think they pressured better the last couple games. You're right. They're not finishing plays. They're not getting sacks. And I disagree with, defensive coaches always say it's not about sacks, it's about pressure. But I like sacks. Sacks turn a 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 17. Pressure turns a 1st and 10 into a 2nd and 10. So it's a big difference. The odds are if you get a sack early in the drive, they're not converting. It just becomes such a, and they're just not getting it. They got 23 sacks in 13 games.
21, I think.
21. Yeah, it's the fewest ever since sacks became. Actually, it's the fewest. We can now look it up since before they became an official stat. It's the fewest since like 76.
Which, by the way,
after
I love. Games. Pro Football Reference, if you guys don't know, they went back and they handed out sacks. It was a project that took them years. They handed out sacks, and there's new sack numbers from before sacks became an official stat, which is incredible.
Yeah, like Claude Humphrey had 15 and a half sacks for the Super Bowl team. And the late Claude Humphrey, rest in peace, died last week. I was looking up his career, and in the Super Bowl season, he had 15 and a half sacks. That was 3 years before sacks became an official stat. I wonder if they'll ever make those retroactively official. It would be interesting if they make those numbers official, because they went back in the game books, and you can see those old game books on NFL Jesus, and like it'll say like Claude Humphrey sacked, or tackled the quarterback for 8-yard loss. I don't think they called him sacks yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. And you did a story on it, kind of looking at what records changed and what would have changed. But it's fascinating stuff. And Claude Humphrey would be like top. He only played here 3 years, but he had like 30 sacks in those 3 years, and he'd be in the Eagles' all-time sack leaders with that 15 and a half sack season. It's interesting to go back and look at that. But I think you need a StatHead subscription. No, you probably don't. I don't know.
No, it shows up. Yeah,
it shows up. But but the point being, they've got to make life difficult for quarterbacks, period. This secondary looks so much better when they're in the quarterback's face, and they just there's times where they really look good, Dave. I mean, there's times where you're like, man, this D line's finally coming to life, and then they just, I mean, the Giants game is a great example. I mean, Daniel Jones is not one of those, like, he's not one of those guys who's getting rid of the ball quick. Certainly, he's back there holding it, and they couldn't get to him. No, they got to get to Heineke these two, these next few weeks, and whoever's playing for the Giants.
Yeah. And my last one, a special teams one, Jake Elliott has to stay hot. Go ahead and knock on wood, but
Jinx, you're a jinx.
There's a really good chance some of these games are going to be close, and he could be the difference. I mean, he could really be an X factor for this team. He's been that good this year. He's been almost automatic all year. He has 2 misses. One of them was blocked.
And the other one, I think, was 46.
Yeah,
which
and
he
missed it. But.
Yeah, so he hasn't missed inside 45. Yeah, it's another. You watch some of the, like, that Rams kicker, man. That dude is money. What do you have? I mean, you see kickers around the league, and you see bad kickers, and just the effect it has on teams. And then you see the Tucker and the guy with the Rams, and some of these guys making 56-yarders like they're extra points. I feel like even when Jake Elliott was like, I mean, I feel better about him now than I have since the Super Bowl season, when he was almost like too new to even know what was going on. He was rookie. I mean, I actually like you don't have to hold your breath when he's kicking now. I mean, because not only making them, I mean, they're all going right down the middle. I mean, every one of these, he's made 15 in a row. I think they've all been, they've been right, right through. I don't have that, like, here comes Jake Elliott feeling like I have certainly last year. I mean, I don't know if he could bounce back from that. I mean, missed 2 inside 30 last year. I mean,
and he missed a couple extra points.
Sorry?
Missed a couple extra points last year, too.
Yeah. Yeah, but he's it's a great point. I mean, he's as hot as any kicker, and they need him to stay that way. I mean, because these games are going to be close. These next few games are going to be close. Maybe I think they blow out the Giants, but I think the 2 Washington games are going to be close, and they're going to need him. They're going to need him, no doubt.
Yeah. Anything I missed from my list?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. I think, obviously they have to stay healthy in a couple key areas, like we saw Kelsey hobbling off the last couple of weeks. I mean, guys like Kelsey and Slay, there's some guys they just can't afford to lose, and they're probably 1 and 1A. Those two, even like, well, I mean, DeVonta, they certainly can't afford to, but
Dallas,
Hurst looked good last night. He caught five balls, caught all the balls thrown his way. That's one thing that really helped both players.
Yeah, he was on that interception in the red zone. That ball was going to him.
Yeah,
he's played well.
Yeah,
I couldn't believe DeAndre Hopkins dropped that one ball.
Yeah,
never seen him drop one like that.
Yeah, it was bad. He was not happy.
No, it's like he's one of those guys who just doesn't drop anything.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
Score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership, along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA. Get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For all the details, visit AAA.com/Eagles. It's the Nissan year-end sales event with last chance offers you'll want to hang on to. Shop your local Nissan store or visit nissanusa.com today. Better hang on to those deals before they slip away.
So we'll really start to break down Washington and the upcoming game on the next pod later in the week. But it was kind of nice that we got to sit back and watch that 1 o'clock game, Washington and Dallas. It looked like a blowout early, and then Washington made it tough. So it's kind of fun to be able to watch that. And I'm sure Nick Sirianni and the coaches were kind of watching it like a Sunday watching football, but I'm sure they were getting a little more involved. What'd you make of them? I mean, what do you make of this team in general?
They play very hard. They want to win, running the ball and playing defense. Heineke had played really well up until Sunday. His last 4 games, I mean, he was really sharp. I don't think they're a great running team, but they stick with it. And Morris runs hard. I think they're really well coached. I think you have to play smart and you have to play well to beat them, but I don't think they're a particularly great team. And, um, they generally don't beat themselves. I think that the key is going to be if the Eagles can run the ball like they have the last 6 weeks, I just don't see Washington being in the game, honestly. I think, and we don't know. I mean, we don't know about McLaurin. We think Heineke's going to play. Jonathan Allen, we don't know. And they got a bunch of guys on the COVID list. I think, they put 4 guys on? And they have other guys who are still on from last week. I guess they'll be cleared most likely. But, yeah, I don't think – I think if the Eagles play their game, they win. I just feel
that's probably fair.
Yeah.
And we'll see. The two things to monitor this week for Washington are Terry McLaurin. I mean, if he can't play, that's a huge loss. And then Jonathan Allen, who is on the COVID list. And Allen in particular, I mean, that's the strength of this Washington team to me, is that line, particularly the inside with Allen and Payne. I mean, if they're missing Jonathan Allen,
yeah.
And that was an area too where I thought they might have an advantage on the Eagles. The Eagles have a rookie, he's played well, but a rookie in Landon Dickerson, a potentially hobbled Jason Kelsey, and Nate Herbig. That's a tough matchup against Washington's interior. So if Allen ends up not playing in this game, that gives the Eagles quite an advantage.
Yeah, and he's kind of like Hargrave in that he'll get after the quarterback from the inside. Yeah, and I think most likely he would be back. I mean, Monday, he is vaccinated. Our pal JP Finley broke the story that he was was going onto the COVID list. But yeah, it's certainly something to keep an eye on. I think Ron Rivera's done a great job there. I mean, he took over a team that was really in shambles on the field and off the field. I mean, the whole franchise was a train wreck, and he's just so solid, and he's just such a solid guy. I feel like they're the kind of team that if you make a mistake, they'll take advantage of it. If you I don't think they're a great team, but if you don't keep your foot on the gas, they're gonna, they'll beat you. I think you really have to play smart and avoid mistakes. I think if they can do that, then I think it would be really huge to get to 500. I think that would be a huge accomplishment for this team, considering where they were sitting at 2-5, coming out of Vegas. And I think once you get to 500, you kind of look at yourself a little differently as a football team, as a franchise. It's not like you've arrived anywhere, but you're like, hey, we're not losers. We're like, it would mean they're 5-2 in their last 7 with the Giants coming to town, and that's a place you'd be really happy to be.
Yeah, and he hit the over on the season win total, which I think was 6.5, right?
I'll keep reminding people that I had them 2-5 and finishing 9-8. I just keep saying that every week.
The last thing we wanted to talk about, Rasul Douglas, another pick 6. He's playing really well.
He is. He's jumping routes all over the place. And on that team, he can afford to do that. They get great pressure.
Yeah. With the Packers, by the way, if you guys haven't been.
With the Packers, yeah. And just since he left here, he was cut after the, after training camp, I guess, last year. He went to Carolina and played there. Played well early and then ended up not playing that much late in the season. I think he went to the Raiders, he went to the Texans, and he went to Arizona on their practice squad to start this year. He was on their practice squad 2 months ago. The Packers had all kinds of injuries at cornerback. They were desperate. They signed him to the 53. He's got 3 interceptions and 2 pick sixes in 8 games for the number 1 seed right now in the NFC. And, is he really that good now? And it's in his, Twitter was all like, the Eagles gave up on him. They never even gave him a chance. I mean, he played like 1,700 snaps of defense here. He had a lot of chances, and there was times he played well early. He did not play well in 2019, and they cut ties with him and Sidney.
Sidney Jones.
Sidney Jones, thank you. We had somebody who got all pissed at us for not explaining who Sidney Jones was.
2nd round pick, number 43 overall from Washington. Tore his Achilles at his pro day.
His pro day was in Washington. So anyway, he it's a good story of persistence, and I think you're happy for him. He's been through a lot. I mean, Rasul Rasul was so broke as a kid. He told me when he was in JUCO, he went to Nassau. I believe he went to Nassau Community College in Uniondale. It's right across the street from Nassau Coliseum. I covered a basketball game there once at Nassau County College. It was Gloucester County College against Nassau in a Region 19 junior college tournament game. But he went to that school, and he said he was so broke. He grew up in Elizabeth in North Jersey that he would get McDonald's for lunch and eat half of it and eat the other half for dinner. And, that's the, so you got to be happy for him that he's stuck with it. He's in his 5th year with his 6th team in, 20 months. And whether it means he's going to have a long career there, I don't know. It's good to see him doing well and making plays. He's the first Packer, interestingly, with a pick 6 in back-to-back games since oh crap. No, my memory is so bad. It's only a Hall of Famer. Hang on a second.
The look of realization on your face when you got to that point was incredible.
I'm going to be really embarrassed because it's Herb Adderley. Thank you. God, Herb Adderley, who grew up, about a mile from where I'm sitting now. He grew up in Philly, went to Northeast High, and remained in the area. Great player, great guy. In 1965, Herb Adderley had pick 6 in back-to-back games. And 56 years later, Rasul Douglas does it. So happy for him. We'll see how it goes. But there's something to say about, persistence and sticking with it and being on a practice squad. And, we've seen so many guys on the Eagles take that route and do well. So good for him.
Yeah. And an important note about him is at the time, I thought it was a mistake that they released Rasul and Sidney because they didn't have they made their top backup corner, Craig James. So I thought they should have at least kept one of them as a backup, but that was also their final years of their contract. So there's no guarantee he'd even be here this year. So
right.
People who are really killing the Eagles for it, it's tough to do that.
Yeah. And I thought the mistake wasn't necessarily cutting both Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas. It was not having anybody in place to replace them. And Craig James and, they'd signed Trevor Williams and they had a whole bunch of corners. This team goes through corners, man. Like I go through like iced tea. I mean, they just like, they've been looking for that answer at outside corner forever. But good for Rasul and who knows? He's got a chance to get a second Super Bowl ring the way the Packers are playing. And by the way, I mean, you watch Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady are like the 2 oldest quarterbacks in football, and they might be the 2 best. I mean, it's crazy. Unreal. It's crazy.
Matt Stafford is balling too, though.
Yeah, he's something else, man. He made some big time throws, and you see those throws, and you're like, Jalen can't make that throw. Like I try not. It's impossible for me not to. And of course, Jalen does things that Matt Stafford doesn't do. But all the teams that won yesterday had quarterbacks making big time throws down the field, and it's impossible for me not. And again, I like Jalen. I think he, there's a lot to like about his game. But when I watch these guys through the prism of can Jalen be the guy long term for the Eagles, and when I see some of those throws that these guys make, I just those aren't throws that Jalen's making. So, it's a question that's going to be lingering over his game, and it's magnified when you're not at an Eagles game. You're actually at home watching, a bunch of other games and seeing these guys make these throws.
Well, it was a fun weekend of watching football. We appreciate you guys for not killing us for having one fewer podcast last week. We wanted to take some time and get away from it for a little bit, but we're back and ready for the stretch run. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. That's it. We'll be back later in the week. For Reuben, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.